The mind is perpetually active, a relentless stream of thoughts flowing from one to the next without pause. It spins stories, creates worries, builds dreams, and replays memories, all in an unending loop. This internal dialogue is like a radio station that never goes off the air, broadcasting commentary on everything we see, feel, and imagine. It narrates our lives, often uninvited, filling quiet moments with noise and distracting us from the world around us. Even when we try to focus or find stillness, the chatter persists, jumping from one topic to another, as though it has a life of its own. This constant activity can be both fascinating and exhausting. The mind has an incredible capacity for creativity and problem-solving, yet it also has a tendency to get stuck in patterns, obsess over trivialities, and generate unnecessary anxieties. It seems to crave something to analyze, critique, or fix, even when there's nothing truly pressing. Often we don't even notice how much of our attention the mind's chatter consumes. It becomes the background noise of our existence, so familiar that we rarely question it. And yet, this ceaseless mental activity shapes our perceptions, emotions, and actions, subtly influencing the way we experience life. Many people live under the impression that their thoughts are an accurate reflection of reality, as though the mind's narrative is an objective truth. This misunderstanding leads to a profound entanglement with mental chatter, where every fleeting idea, judgment, or assumption is taken at face value. The mind tells a story about ourselves, about others, about the world, and we believe it without question, as if it were the voice of ultimate authority. When a thought arises, such as "I'm not good enough," or "things will never get better," it often feels as real as a physical object we can touch. We internalize these notions, letting them shape our self-image and worldview. The mind creates vivid scenarios, projecting fears into the future or regrets into the past, and we react emotionally as though these imagined situations are happening right now. This habit of mistaking thoughts for reality can cloud our judgment, making it difficult to distinguish between what is and what the mind says. A negative thought can feel like a concrete fact, when in truth, it's simply a passing mental construct. Similarly, opinions and beliefs, whether our own or others' are often taken as irrefutable truths, despite being shaped by individual experiences and biases. The problem with equating thoughts to reality is that it confines us to the limitations of the mind's interpretations. Instead of seeing the world as it truly is, we view it through a lens colored by past experiences, assumptions, and conditioned patterns. This creates a distorted version of reality, one that reinforces our fears, insecurities, and misunderstandings. When we begin to step back and question the validity of our thoughts, we discover a liberating truth: thoughts are not facts. They are transient, subjective, and often inaccurate. This awareness allows us to approach our inner dialogue with curiosity rather than blind acceptance, freeing us from the grip of the mind's illusions. Within each of us exists a silent, unchanging presence that watches the activity of the mind. This presence, often overlooked or unnoticed, is not bound by the thoughts it observes. It does not judge, analyze, or interfere, it simply witnesses. When you pause and reflect, you may notice that while thoughts come and go, there is something constant that perceives them. This is the observer, the awareness behind the mind. The observer is distinct from the thoughts themselves. While the mind may race with worries, fantasies, or plans, the observer remains steady, untouched by the content of those thoughts. It is like the sky, vast and unchanging, while thoughts are like passing clouds, momentary and fleeting. This distinction can feel subtle, yet it is profound. It reveals that we are not the mind's activity, but the awareness in which that activity unfolds. Recognizing the observer is a transformative experience. It creates a space between you and your thoughts, allowing you to see them for what they are: transient, impersonal phenomena, rather than definitive truths. This shift of perspective can dissolve the grip of negative or compulsive thinking. Instead of being swept away by a thought, believing it, reacting to it, you can simply notice it arise and pass, like watching a wave on the ocean. This recognition also brings clarity. By observing the mind, you begin to see its patterns and habits without judgment. You notice how it clings to the past, anticipates the future, and resists the present. You see how it creates stories, labels experiences, and assigns meaning. And through this seeing, you become less entangled, less identified with the mind's narrative. The observer is not something you have to create or achieve. It is already there, quietly present in every moment. It is the part of you that has always been aware, even in the midst of the mind's busiest moments. By turning your attention to this silent awareness, you begin to rest in a deeper sense of self, one that is not bound by the limitations of thought. Freedom begins the moment you recognize that you are not your thoughts, but the awareness observing them. This simple yet profound shift creates a space between you and the activity of your mind, a space where you can step back and see thoughts for what they truly are: fleeting mental constructs, rather than absolute truths. In this space, you find the power to choose to engage with a thought, to let it pass, or to simply observe it without reacting. Observation is not about controlling the mind or forcing it into silence. It's about noticing what arises without judgment or interference. When you observe your thoughts with curiosity and detachment, you begin to see their transient nature. A thought that once felt heavy or overwhelming starts to lose its grip, like a shadow dissolving in sunlight. You realize that no thought, no matter how persistent or intense, has the power to define you unless you let it. Through observation, the patterns of the mind become clear. You begin to notice how it clings to the past, replays memories, or constructs elaborate worries about the future. You see how it labels experiences, judges situations, and creates stories about who you are and how the world works. This awareness allows you to question the validity of these mental habits and to recognize that much of the mind's activity is unnecessary noise. As you continue to observe, you discover a deeper stillness beneath the mind's chatter, a calm, spacious awareness that is untouched by thoughts or emotions. This stillness is not something you create, it is always present, revealed when you stop identifying with the turbulence of the mind. In this stillness, you find freedom not by changing or fixing the mind, but by no longer being bound by it. Freedom through observation does not mean the mind stops its activity entirely. Thoughts will still arise, emotions will come and go, but you are no longer pulled into their drama. You see them as part of the flow of life, passing through like clouds in the sky. This freedom is not about escaping the mind, it's about living in harmony with it, knowing that you are the observer, not the observed. The mind is a dynamic and ever-changing entity, like a river that flows unpredictably, carrying with it an endless stream of thoughts, emotions, and impressions. Yet many of us expend immense energy trying to control it, attempting to stop its flow, direct its course, or silence its noise. We believe that if only we could master the mind by sheer force of will, we would find peace. But this effort, however well-intentioned, often leads to frustration and exhaustion. The more you try to control the mind, the more resistant it becomes. It's like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you grip, the more it slips away. Thoughts don't disappear simply because you tell them to go away. In fact, the act of resisting often amplifies them, giving them more power and presence. A simple worry, once resisted, can snowball into a cycle of anxiety, with each attempt to suppress it feeding its intensity. This struggle arises from a misunderstanding of the mind's nature. The mind is not a machine to be programmed or a wild animal to be tamed. It operates according to its own rhythms, influenced by past experiences, current stimuli, and countless unconscious processes. Trying to impose rigid control over it is like trying to dictate the direction of the wind or command the waves to cease their motion. Such efforts are not only futile but counterproductive. True peace with the mind is not achieved through domination but through understanding. When you stop trying to control the mind and instead observe it with patience and curiosity, its chaotic energy begins to settle naturally. Thoughts lose their power when you no longer engage in a tug-of-war with them. By letting the mind be, you create space for it to function without resistance, allowing clarity and calm to arise on their own. Letting go of the need to control does not mean passivity or indifference. It means recognizing that the mind's activity is not inherently a problem. Thoughts and emotions are natural occurrences, like clouds in the sky or leaves on a stream. When you allow them to come and go without interference, you realize that you are not at the mercy of the mind. Its flow becomes something you can witness, rather than something you must control. Thoughts are like the currents of a river, constantly moving, shifting, and evolving. They arise spontaneously, flow for a time, and eventually fade, only to be replaced by new ones. Yet many of us resist this natural process. We cling to certain thoughts, trying to hold on to them, or push others away, as if their mere presence could harm us. This resistance creates tension, as though we are trying to dam a river that is meant to run freely. Letting thoughts flow does not mean suppressing them or pretending they don't exist. It means allowing them to arise and pass without interference, without getting caught in their stories. When you observe thoughts with this openness, you begin to see their transient nature. No thought, no matter how compelling or persistent, stays forever. Each one arises, lingers for a moment, and then fades, like clouds drifting across the sky. This approach brings a sense of ease to the mind. When you stop fighting with your thoughts, they lose their intensity. A worry that once felt overwhelming becomes just another ripple in the stream, no longer gripping your attention. By letting go of the need to control or judge your thoughts, you free yourself from the cycle of resistance and struggle that often amplifies mental noise. Letting thoughts flow also opens the door to deeper awareness. When you stop clinging to or resisting individual thoughts, you begin to notice the space in which they arise. This space is vast, peaceful, and unaffected by the content of the thoughts themselves. It's a reminder that you are not confined to the activity of the mind, you are the awareness in which it all unfolds. As you practice letting thoughts flow, you may find that even the most troubling or persistent thoughts lose their power. They become like passing scenery, observed but not absorbed. This doesn't mean you stop thinking altogether. Thoughts will continue to come and go, as is their nature. But by allowing them to flow freely, you create a sense of harmony with the mind, no longer entangled in its endless currents. The present moment is the only place where life truly unfolds, yet the mind often pulls us away from it. It lures us into the past, replaying memories and regrets, or pushes us into the future, constructing scenarios of what might come. In doing so, it blinds us to the richness and depth of the now, the only moment that is ever real. Anchoring in the present is the act of returning to this reality, of letting go of mental distractions to fully experience what is here and now. When you anchor yourself in the present, you notice the details of life that are often overlooked. The sound of the wind in the trees, the sensation of your breath moving in and out, the warmth of the sun on your skin, these simple experiences come alive when your attention rests in the moment. The present reveals itself as vibrant and complete, free from the mental filters of past judgments or future anxieties. This practice is not about denying the past or ignoring the future, but about recognizing their nature. The past exists only as memory, shaped and filtered by the mind. The future exists only as imagination, a projection of hopes and fears. Neither is as tangible or immediate as the present. Yet the mind often treats them as more real than the moment at hand. Anchoring in the present allows you to see this clearly, dissolving the illusion of time's dominance. To anchor in the present is to shift from thinking to being. It is not about doing something special or achieving a particular state, but about fully inhabiting the moment as it is. This might involve focusing on the rhythm of your breath, the sensations in your body, or the sounds around you. It's about allowing your awareness to settle into what is happening right now without the need to analyze or change it. The beauty of the present is that it is always available. No matter how busy or chaotic life may seem, there is always a moment, this moment, where you can pause and return to the now. In doing so, you discover a sense of peace that is not dependent on external circumstances. The present is simple yet profound, offering a refuge from the mind's incessant activity and a gateway to deeper clarity and connection with life. The mind is a remarkable instrument, capable of creativity, analysis, problem-solving, and imagining possibilities beyond the immediate moment. It is a tool that has allowed humanity to build civilizations, create art, develop technologies, and explore the mysteries of the universe. Yet, its very power can become a source of confusion when we forget its true purpose. The mind is meant to serve us, not dominate us, but many people live as though the mind is their master rather than their tool. When the mind is treated as an identity, something to define who we are, it can trap us in cycles of overthinking, worry, and self-doubt. It creates narratives, replaying memories of the past, or constructing anxieties about the future, distracting us from the richness of the present moment. However, when the mind is understood as a tool, it is liberated from the burden of being something it was never meant to be. As a tool, the mind is most effective when applied intentionally and with purpose. It can help solve problems, plan for the future, and interpret the world around us, but it doesn't need to operate constantly. Just as you wouldn't use a hammer when there's nothing to build, the mind doesn't need to be engaged when there's no practical task at hand. Learning to set it down, to let it rest, allows clarity and creativity to emerge naturally. This shift in perspective requires us to cultivate awareness of how the mind operates. We begin to notice when it's genuinely useful and when it's simply spinning its wheels. With practice, we can redirect its energy, using it to focus on what truly matters rather than letting it run wild. This intentional use of the mind brings a sense of balance as we learn to harness its power without being consumed by it. Recognizing the mind as a tool also reveals the deeper truth of who we are. We are not the thoughts, concepts, or labels that the mind generates. These are simply expressions of the mind's activity, not the essence of our being. By stepping back and seeing the mind for what it is, we gain access to a deeper awareness of presence that is constant and unchanging, regardless of the mind's activity. In this way, the mind becomes a trusted ally rather than a tyrant. It serves its purpose without overshadowing the fullness of life, helping us navigate the world while leaving space for stillness, connection, and the experience of simply being. And so, in recognizing the true nature of the mind, we discover a profound freedom. The mind is neither an enemy to be subdued nor a master to be obeyed. It is a tool to be understood and observed, a ceaseless flow of thoughts that need not define us. By stepping back into the role of the observer, by letting thoughts flow without resistance, and by anchoring ourselves in the present moment, we come to see the mind for what it truly is, a magnificent instrument, but not the core of who we are. In this realization lies peace, not through control or struggle, but through clarity and alignment with the deeper awareness that resides within us. Life becomes lighter, richer, and more vibrant as we loosen the mind's grip and open ourselves to the vast stillness and presence that is always here, beneath the noise. To master the mind, we must first realize that true mastery is not about domination, but liberation. And in that liberation, we come home to ourselves,